All right, folks, welcome to the April edition of the American Praetorians live stream. This month we have Blaine Pardoe joining us. Welcome,
Hi.
Blaine.
It's great to be here.
Is it though?
We'll see how you feel about that in half an hour.
All right. Well, I'll give you a chance.
Fresh meat.
So, Blaine, how about you introduce yourself?
My name is Blaine Pardoe. I'm a New York Times bestselling author. I've won numerous awards for my books. I write military history nonfiction, true crime. I also write military sci-fi. I write business management books. I write in a lot of different genres. And, I've had a lot of good experience with it. It's been a lot of fun. I've had some ups and downs. I got canceled by the left last year, but I bounced back simply and got my revenge by being a best-selling author. So,
Well, they say success is the best revenge.
Absolutely.
Occasionally it's violence, though.
Penguin's getting started early tonight, I see.
Oh God, always with his shit.
Trust me, I'm not nervous. I spent the weekend with, a couple hundred Rangers on a military base. I don't think these guys are going to throw anything at me that I haven't seen yet. Although we'll see. You guys may try.
That's kind of Coop's role on this stream. Is he's kind of our designated instigator.
Oh well, every group's got one.
He fits it so naturally too. We don't have to. This isn't like anything we agreed upon.
I was going to say I don't think I needed to be designated anything.
No, it's self-designated, basically. Yeah,
Self-anointed.
Coop is the goon, just like in hockey.
I was the goon in hockey. I played hockey for like 15 years in a league that did not have like sanctioned fighting, and I still did it anyway. So.
What's the point of playing hockey if there's no fighting?
I've been to one hockey game, and the refs kept breaking up the fights, and it was boring.
It's just figure skating at that point.
Pete, that's because it was called Pee Wee hockey.
Technically, it was college hockey, but I'll take your word for it.
Oh, these Title IX things.
So, Blaine, when did you get started anyway?
I got started right after I graduated college in 1984. I started writing books in the role-playing industry and gaming industry, and that eventually led to me doing novels for Battletech, which I'd written for. God, I wrote for Battletech for 36 years before I was canceled from there. I love doing this stuff. It's just a blast. And recently I've been writing for Wargate and for Defiance Press on 2 series. I'm also doing a book right now for Galaxy's Edge, which is going to involve some mecha stuff, which is really a lot of fun because everybody wants mecha in there. And so it's hunter killer planet pounders all over the place. And it's been a blast to do. So
are you nervous about jumping into the whole super giant stompy robots?
No, I've been doing giant stompy robots my whole career. It's a lot of fun, actually.
One could say you pioneered it.
Well, I was one of the authors that has been around since the first year that Battletech came out. I wrote in one of the first books they released, which is the Tech Readout. I've been involved with it for a long time. It's I look back at it now and I kind of think, gee, there's parts of that are really crazy, but it's been fun. I think I did all I could do in Battletech. I feel like I'm having control over my own franchises, etc. Has really allowed me to go off and do some different stuff, especially with the Land and Sea series.
Yeah. So, did Land and Sea come first, or did Catalyst Games sort of show you the door and you said, all right, I'm going to go do my own Battletech with giant monsters as well?
Well, about 5 years ago, I had written the books about 5 years ago. We finished the first trilogy. We had it on the shelf, and we were waiting for the right time to release it. We were going to do it as a Kickstarter and do each book, and we had everything prepped for that. When Catalyst showed me the door, there was a real down period. It's, when you get booted, even when it's for all the wrong reasons, you sit there and go, is this really going to be bad for me or whatever? But I had 5 publishers reach out to me, and say, hey, come write for us. And Wargate was one of those. So, it was pretty good. And then I was like, well, we do have these 3 completed books sitting on the shelf, including some artwork and other stuff. And it was a perfect fit. And so it's been great. I've been back writing that stuff a lot. Tomorrow we release book 4 in the series. So we've been doing a book a month since January. And then the next one comes out in June because, we think there's a lot of readers that need to get caught up. We're kind of cranking them out faster than what the readers can keep up with. So I had those in my back pocket, and now I've just been adding to the pool.
So I've gathered a couple things about Land and Sea that you're planning on more than just the books. I saw that there was a miniature that came out, at least one.
Yep. There's a bunch. Actually, I've got one of the aliens here.
And there's nothing Harmony Gold can do about it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's fun. We're going to do a tabletop and RPG game that goes with it. I did the design on it. We're in development right now. So that it's on schedule. The goal is to have that out sometime next year. We'll be doing play testing starting, I think, late fall is what the schedule calls for. And we've got some other things that are in the hopper right now. We've been talking with some folks about comic books and things along those lines that tie into the universe. And we actually, when I wrote this, we set up some hooks that were deliberate for comic book series that we wanted to do. Some locations where we talk about battles, but we don't get into them in depth, where we knew what the story was there and thought it would be good. So we found a really good partner to do some stuff with that. And there'll be a big announcement about that down the road. But the goal here isn't to write a series of books. It's more to create a franchise. And that's what people are looking for, I think, is they want to be able to play the stuff. They want to be able to paint miniatures. They want to read the novels. They really want to immerse themselves in the universe. And I think that's important. You understand that, P. I mean, your series is really good. I mean,
Coop
I've been
said,
beating myself up because we have the same narrator. And the guys at Wargate told me, they said, just listen to his book on audiobook. And I'm like, I don't like listening to audiobooks. And I've been listening to it at the gym, and I'm on chapter 20 right now. And it's like, God, you weave pretty good prose there. So I'm like, I'm taking notes. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. I'm flattered.
Coop said you were going to go make your own Battletech, and man, he wasn't kidding.
Oh yeah, we went out and did our own mechs and did our own stuff.
Which is hard to do. It's very hard to get into the whole tabletop and models and all that and comic books with giant militarized robots and giant evil monsters. They just doesn't normally mix. So it really is a pioneering risk, as it were.
Well, we wanted to get away from, Battletech has its own market, and I don't have anything bad to say about Battletech per se. My problem is with the people that run Battletech. So,
that and the filthy clanners.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that none of the people currently running it necessarily were there in the beginning either.
No. A lot of these guys have come around over the years, and Battletech is owned by Fanatics and Tops, and it gets licensed to whoever buys the license. Right now, the current license holder is Catalyst, and they've got an agenda that they're running with, and it's sad and it's weird, and I felt like they kind of stabbed a lot of the fan base in the back. But, they're making hand over fist. They have a Kickstarter going right now for Battletech, and it's making millions of dollars. So, no fun. I never called for a boycott of these guys because, I don't think boycotts work. It's very rare that you get a circumstance where I think boycotts actually have a desired impact. So, they can go do their thing. I'm doing my thing. I doubt seriously I'll ever return to Battletech. I definitely won't while those people are running it. The trust has been betrayed. And I'm a kind of person, I jump in full throttle with the publishers I work with, and things along those lines. And to get stabbed in the back after 36 years, for somebody who was pretending to be a lesbian nurse, and then said, "Oh wait, I'm actually transgender." Then came out in December and said,
I
"Oh,
didn't
by the
say
way,
any of that.
I'm none of those things." But it's crazy. You couldn't literally. If I wrote this as a book, you wouldn't believe it.
There seems to be a lot of that going around these days.
Yeah. Well, Pavlo John is right. We're testing that theory. It's hitting their market share, but is it? I don't subscribe to what the press says about.
They're going to get bailed out by the ESG, like BlackRock, and the boycotts don't work because there is a stopgap that is more lucrative than reacting to the market.
Yeah, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we all know, and I don't subscribe. When the media tells you anything, you have to question it. And when they tell you, "Oh, it's really hurting Anheuser-Busch," I'm like, okay, I don't believe that.
No, it dropped 5 to 6% the day after on the market, which is usually that's a dip that you buy so that when it returns, you can sell and make a couple bucks profit.
Well, we saw that with Colin Kaepernick. Remember Colin Kaepernick? Nike stock took a big dive. It took like an 18% dive, but it recovered after 4 or 5 months. And
because there are always enough people who don't actually care about what's going on in the background.
Yeah,
they just know the brand.
I don't think a giant corporation like Anheuser-Busch or whoever owns it is going to go out of business because of this.
No, but Catalyst Games is not Anheuser-Busch.
That's true. That is true.
But like Blaine was saying, like the Kickstarter is already reaching the millions, and that's because the strength of the franchise itself, no matter who's running it, has a lot of appeal that people will latch onto, no matter what the behind the scene politics are. This isn't privateer press; they can actually run on the strength of their franchise. So,
yeah. Well, and a lot of these. A lot of fans will go, "I'm never going to buy into anything they ever do," but they're very vocal about it online. But we all know they turn around, go buy into the stuff.
I have another theory about that. Those fans are usually passionate enough that they're already 3D printing their own. So
there's a lot of that too.
Like how much damage are they going to do when they are making their own Atlas 2s, to their exact specification rather than buying the model kits?
Well, and that's been a challenge. As starting up a game company, is how do you deal with the 3D printer thing? And we've taken a kind of a philosophy of let's embrace the hell out of it, because it's not going to go away and you can't control it. You can't lock the file so that only if you bought it, Coop, nobody else can print it type thing. There's nothing that prevents you from pushing it out there. And our philosophy is, rather than send out cease and desist letters to guys who are out 3D printing this stuff, we should make the files available at some point for sale and just let people print their own damn miniatures, because they're going to do it anyway.
And that was one of the things that FASA really understood when they first came out, where when they were designing the game, they were saying, like, look, if you have a quarter, you can use that as a token on the playmat. As opposed to Games Workshop, which was like, no, it has to be our $30 mini.
Even back in the day, even Games Workshop was putting out paper models of like Bane blades and stuff that could be basically cut out and put together. Even they weren't quite as far gone as they are now.
Right. They started out very differently than they ended up, though. FASA, on the other hand, they had a very consistent sort of philosophy that was dented and shaped by external factors rather than just internal sort of like statistical review and seeing how they could change from that. By external factors, I'm talking about like the Microsoft buyouts and Harmony Gold and all that nonsense.
Yeah, you got to embrace this stuff. It's tech that's not going to go away. I got a 3D printer sitting on my work table over here, and I print miniatures all the time. And you're not going to make it go away, so you might as well just, invite people to do it. We talked about, and we haven't settled on this for sure, but it's like we'll sell a miniature, and then maybe 3 or 4 months later, make the STLs available with a different pose.
There you go.
Then if people want to buy the STLs, they can. Because our whole belief is, well, if you're printing the miniatures, you're probably going to be playing the game.
Exactly.
Silly stuff,
Well, the company that does the Galaxy's Edge miniatures, I think it's Enemy Spotted Studios. I think you can buy the miniatures or you can buy the STLs.
Yeah,
and
it's just the way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, besides, at least for the time being, I don't think I don't think they're losing a ton of money from people with 3D printers, at least not yet. So the idea is, this is going to put us in the ground because most people still don't have 3D printers. That might change if they start really coming down in price, but just rolling with it, you know what? You're going to engender yourself with the fans more that way, I think.
You know what's going to change it, honestly, is the first time that we end up in a war with China and there's an embargo. Because all these miniatures are coming from China, and the minute those boats stop coming over with their cargo containers full of miniatures, it's going to dramatically change things.
That's going to have a lot of second and third order effects for a lot of our economy because a lot of our consumer products are based around this model of you buy something and then it breaks and then you replace it because it's cheaper to make a new one than it is to have people who are trained and knowledgeable how to fix things.
I don't know, dude. If we're in a hot war with China and we're still playing miniatures, I think we're winning at that point.
I don't know.
Blaine's got some opinions on that.
Well, I had to, because in the Blue Dawn series, I actually dealt with China taking Taiwan because it's a domino effect. What we've seen with Afghanistan is what led to Ukraine, and what happened in Ukraine is going to lead to what happens in Taiwan.
Pete, take notes.
It's going to happen. And, I don't know if the United States has got the fortitude at this point or the ability to project power that far out in the Pacific rapidly to actually have an influence on what happens in Taiwan when China decides to make its move. But that's my opinion.
I think a couple of the deciding factors on Taiwan are going to be just how fragile the PLA actually turns out to be. And there are a number of indicators that it's a lot more fragile than they want people to think, just morale-wise. There's also the fact that the Taiwanese have been digging into that island for the last 70 years, and they have the highest mountains in East Asia to work with. So it's not going to be easy. I did a fair bit of research on it myself for Option Zulu that wrapped up the Maelstrom Rising series. But again, they swamp them with enough people and material. There's only so long they're going to be able to hold out.
They got 29 days worth of fuel on the island. And that's, all it takes is all you got to really do is blockade long enough because you can't airlift in enough fuel to keep an army operational. So, if they blockade the island long enough, it's good that you have tanks, but they become stationary pillboxes after a while.
You say that, but we did that in Afghanistan for a while when Pakistan stopped letting us use their port. We ran that entire war off of airlift for at least a year, I think, if I remember right. It's enormously expensive, though. So
but you didn't have an enemy that actually had an air force trying to shoot you down while you were doing it.
The conventional part of conventional warfare is the part that we need to really relearn. And I don't know if you've read Force Projection 2030, but we need to relearn it real fast.
Well, it also comes down to and I've been saying this for some time. The United States Navy has not fought a major naval engagement since World War II. And almost all of our tools, tactics, and weapon systems are not necessarily field tested in modern combat situations. They were built for the Cold War, and that's not necessarily the enemy we're facing here. So,
which is why we're giving it all to Ukraine. Like that $18 billion aid package, that's a polite way of saying, hey, go battle test all of our aging equipment and see what we need to improve on, how effective this is, blah, blah, blah.
Some old Bradley fighting vehicle out there is finally going to get used for its intended purpose of shooting at Russians.
Well, somebody put together an almost Keith Laumer Bolo story about a Bradley waking up and finding itself in Eastern Europe. And there are commies out there that can finally have to be killed.
that could be fun.
Don't tell Catalyst Games that.
Oh.
Yeah. So, Blaine, how did for the people that are just tuning into this whole situation, how did that really go? It wasn't the quality of your work that got you shown the door. It was some outside interference by a particularly disturbed individual.
Yeah, I'll give you the moderately short version, quasi long, because it's crazy. I had a stalker online who claimed to be a lesbian female. I wrote an op-ed that said I'm against Confederate statues being torn down. I'm a military historian. I'm against destroying works of art. If you want to put up a plaque to offer counter information, I'm in favor of that. But tearing down statues without going through due process, I have an actual problem with that. This person started labeling me a Confederate apologist as a result. And started complaining about me, and I blocked this person because I'm like, whatever, you're nuts. I don't care what you think, but that only seemed to infuriate this person more. When I wrote, as this went on, they reached out to Catalyst and said I had hidden secret Confederate messages in my novels.
Just in case the South was really going to rise again.
Yeah. It was crazy. Catalyst reviewed all my social media, reviewed all the books, and told this person no. But this person leveraged the fact that they were quote unquote a lesbian to actually get Catalyst to publish one of their short stories, which I warned them against. I said, you have no idea who this person is. This person's a crazy stalker. Has caused this controversy online. Do you really want to crawl in bed with them? And they're like, oh, no, Battletech is a sausage fest. This is going to be a great opportunity for us. We're going to be able to reach out to women.
They really didn't know who this person was then, did they?
Absolutely not. And I kept telling them, this person's unhinged, so you're probably going down the wrong path. Fast forward about 6 months later, I was doing the Blue Dawn series, which you see behind me, and that book was just announced, which is it's a conservative political thriller series. It's not written for liberals. It's all about a progressive overthrow of the government and a second American Civil War. This person saw the description for that book, reached out to another author, and threatened my life. Said they wanted to shoot me in the effing crotch. Better yet, I'd like to see him set on fire. So law enforcement got involved. They discovered that, lo and behold, it wasn't a lesbian female nurse. It was an unemployed 40-year-old living with his parents who had been arrested for issuing terroristic threats and harassment at the big box store where he worked and had been fired from. He had pled guilty to those charges. So he's a criminal.
I need some Nicolas Cage JPEGs in here. You don't say.
Yeah, I know. At the time it was kind of a cool reveal, but now it's like.
So it's still a sausage fest, though.
Yeah, I informed Catalyst of all of this and said, you should just pull this guy's story. The guy lied about who he is. He signed his contract falsely. And they're like, no, we don't want to upset him. We'll just have him re-sign the contract. And that should have been a clue that they were, folding already. This person continued to harass me online. I actually have a protective order against this idiot. And the person continues even today to post stuff about me. It's just crazy. Finally, last year, they started reaching out to Tops and to Fanatics and going, hey, you got to cancel Blaine Pardoe. Now, I was told by the president of Catalyst there were 5 complaints against me. And I said, how many of those are from sock accounts this person owns? Because I know this person owns at least 3 sock accounts that are fake. And they were like, it doesn't matter. Your stuff you're posting online is incendiary, and you have this ongoing feud with this person. And I'm like, I'm not feuding this person. I can't communicate to this person. And they're like, yeah, but when you get interviewed about your book, you bring it up. And I said, yeah, I told you I'd be doing that. You agreed that you would do the same thing. So, what's the problem? And they're like, well, it's creating a problem. And this person got Fanatics involved. Fanatics' comment to Catalyst was, you need to make this go away. So I said, well, it's easy. Just tell this person to fuck off. Tell them that you're a publishing company and none of my politics, they are in the Blue Dawn series, yes, but they're not in any of the stuff I wrote for Battletech. And I had books and projects underway with them. Some were completed all the way through edit and we're ready to go. And he said, no, the solution is we're going to cease doing business with you. I said, wait a minute. You've got a lot of liberal writers who work for you who say stuff that I find infuriating. So are you applying the same rule you do to me to them? In other words, are they being released for some of their incendiary comments?
Well, no.
And the answer was, well, we're going to have a talking to with a few of them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Ooh.
I'm sure. Yeah. Totally sure that happened.
Yeah, I don't believe it happened at all.
What's his face?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And I told them, I said, I don't want you to throw me under the bus, but you got to tell the fans what's going on. You have to figure out a way to explain this to them. And they opted to do nothing. They were passive aggressive. And it took months to get paid for the outstanding work over and over. And when I finally got paid and stuff, I was waiting for them to say something to the fans, because the fans are constantly asking me, where's this book you were working on? Where's the short story you promised us? And I'm not saying anything. So finally, I talked to my publicist and I talked to my lawyer, and they're like, you know what? Why don't you go public with it? And yeah, you're going to catch a ream of shit doing it, but tell the world what's actually going on here, because you're just a victim of this cancel culture. And I really stressed to him, I said, I'm not a victim. I hate that word. The left uses this all the time to paint people as heroes. They go, George Floyd is a hero because he was a victim. And I'm like, no, you can. Some people are just victims. They're not heroic because of what happened. I'm a target, and that's all.
They think that victim automatically means martyr, when that's not.
Yeah.
What that means.
I didn't want to embrace that. To me, I was a target. So I went public with it. The fan community was it was amazing. There was a bunch of fans that flipped, who were very close friends of mine, who are constantly fawning over me, who flipped. I was shocked by their inevitable betrayal. It just, there was some of that, but the vast majority of the fans thought it was stupid. And Catalyst kept promising that they would explain what they were doing. Never did. They dodged the whole thing. And, at that point, I was like, I'm going to go off and do my own stuff. I am going to continue writing the Blue Dawn series. And Wargate and we struck a deal for doing, Land and Sea. And I've got a book thing that I've got coming up with Bane. Stuff is just falling into my lap at this point, and I'm actually reaching a broader audience beyond that whole little tiny microcosm of Battletech fans. I'm going out to the broader audience, and I'm having a lot more fun. So, and I'm making more money, and I'm doing what I want, and I've moved on.
On one hand, this sounds like your quintessential classic example of cancel culture, because it was just. But on the other hand, it was kind of astroturfed. It was just one crazy person. It wasn't even like a campaign that got started on the internet. It was just one nutter butter.
I think I legitimately believe they had 5 complaints. I don't know how many actual people were behind those.
You know what it really was? What this really boiled down to, I think, is
Blaine. How many people did he identify as? That's the question.
I don't care. This is a person that clearly has some deep-seated issues. In December of this year, this person came out and said, every time I posted anything about this person said it was a transgender attack. And I was like, I thought you were a lesbian. I'm confused now. Then this person in December came out and said, I'm not a lesbian and I'm not transgender, but I'm now going to be writing under a new fake ID. And I'm like, why don't you just tell the world who the hell you are? Have the testicles to say who you are.
What I think you really came up against is a classic example of corporate chicken shit. Right there is like, oh, we don't know what to do. Somebody's making the flap. We don't want to offend somebody that might cause an online mob. Let's just. But that's
the thing.
For 36 years.
When it's a one-sided problem, that the person that's creating the ruckus is usually going to be the hardest to deal with. So they take the path of least resistance and go for the person that's not creating the problem, just to get the problem in and of itself to go away.
Yeah.
So it was like they could have fired this person, and they could have just said, "Hey, we're not doing any more business with you. Please stop ringing our doorbell." And but they know that person is going to just make it their mission in life to harass Catalyst Games or Tops or Fanatics as much as they do you, Blaine. So they saw that and they were just like, we can get this to go away quietly. And what they weren't planning on was the Black Pants Legion and Razor Fist and all of the actual, fan base with an online presence that loved this franchise rally the troops, as it were.
Oh, yeah. I don't think they were prepared for me to go public with it. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a flatulating butthead. If you screw with me, I will screw back so hard, and I'm that kind of level of prick. And I embrace that. That's who I am. Okay. I'm not ashamed of it. It's part of my personality. I come from a long line of people who don't put up with bullshit. I have no idea why the president of Catalyst, who's known me for 2 decades, thought for 1 minute I was going to be quiet about this. It's like literally not in my DNA to sit and let somebody beat the crap out of me and just lay there and take it.
He thought you'd be a Russell hog.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. So, it's bad I don't get to write in Battletech anymore. They nuked a bunch of my stuff that was done that the fans were looking forward to. They paid me off and they're never going to publish it. They hide behind their, they don't want to talk about it at all. When people have brought it up on the Kickstarter, they've kicked them off the Kickstarter, refunded their money.
This is one of the downsides of social media. Before social media, this kind of crap didn't happen very often because, honestly, the companies were a lot less responsive to the fans because you couldn't go online and hassle them, right?
Yeah.
Now you can't.
You needed to form a labor union to do that.
Yeah. So.
As a writer, you just want to tell good stories. I mean, Pete, you know this. It's like all I want to do is write books. All I want to do is come up with cool characters and some awesome scenes and tell fun stories. These guys don't, it's like, why can't you just let me go tell my stories? And it's like, no, you can't. And they have lied. This little woke group that has been out there has lied about so much. They continue to do this. They're like, well, we only wanted him off Battletech. And I'm like, then why did you reach out to my other publishers? You don't think I got those emails? And the best was they actually reached out to my company, Creative Juggernaut, and they sent an anonymous email to our open questions account and said, hey, you should be firing Blaine Pardoe. And I got to respond to that. My partner, Brett, was like, here, you handle it. And I was like, as one of the owners of this company, fuck off.
I elect not to fire myself.
I've decided I'm not going to cancel myself. What are you going to do about it?
Now, I am not a lawyer, but doesn't that sort of reek of tortious interference? Now, granted, like in order to take that to court, you'd need to like prove damages and stuff like that. But if they're reaching out to a third-party publisher for their quote unquote problem,
there's a couple of different laws that come into play. As an independent contractor, Callis could have canceled me at any time, and they're within their rights contractually to do that. It's stupid, but whatever. These guys, you can point to interference to conduct business over state lines, and there are some legal venues that can be applied to them. In this case, I know the identity of several of these people at this point, but is it worth going after an unemployed 40-year-old who's living in his father's basement, who got fired from a big box store because he had a meltdown over COVID and started issuing terroristic threats?
I think I saw that Twitter video.
How much money am I going to be able to milk out of Junior there, who's 40 years old and can't decide if he's a lesbian, a transgender, or a man? You can spend a lot of time going and effort and energy going after these people, but in the end, a lot of them aren't really productive members of society to begin with.
Yeah, Benjamin Blatt, that's what I was saying. It's like you have to prove damages, and like if they can't repair that or do any of the restorative justice as it is, like there's no point.
Yeah.
And in this economy, it's probably not a good idea to bring back debtors' prison. So,
a lot of this could just be solved if they would do away with people being able to set up false identities on the internet. It would end the woke movement overnight if people actually had to use their real names and real contact information on Twitter or whatever service they're using. They had to use their real name. It ends because, they realize somebody can show up at my doorstep. And I deal with a lot of ex-military guys, some special forces, some who do PMC work, things along those lines. There was a lot of guys that lined up and said, hey, just give me the guy's address. I'll go make this go away. And I was like, no, I don't.
We would never do that.
I know. I was like, I don't want that problem, but it was a nice option to have. And it's nice having friends who are willing to go out and break somebody's legs for you.
First Lance reporting for duty.
Senior Lance criminal.
It's like that episode of Family Guy. I'm just
in Battletech, a Lance is the team for the mechs. So it's one Lance is like 4 mechs or thereabouts.
Yeah.
It's so many layers to this gag. Wow.
Yep.
It is. It's weird. The best part is I do write true crime, and I told my wife at some point I'm going to write this up as a book for people who are going through the whole cancel thing, because I've learned a lot about this. One, don't bend the knee. Don't apologize. Don't cater or cave to what these people are doing and try to explain. At one point, and I'll give you a really good example, what the president of Catalyst said, he said, you are posting things that are misogynistic. And I said, what? And he goes, well, like that comment you posted about Joy Behar, I showed that to my wife and it really upset her. And I looked up what the quote was, and somebody had posted a picture of Joy Behar from The View on Twitter, and all I wrote was, you could throw that woman in a pond and skim ugly for a week.
I thought truth was an absolute defense.
Okay, so you guys all get it. That is what we call humor. And, it's something my grandfather said all the time. And I just was like, and I was like, how is that misogynistic? I'm like, did I offend all the guys out there who want to have sex with Joy Behar? I don't apologize for that.
All 1.5 of them.
But it was like,
I would think that desire would be its own punishment.
And I wrote a couple of articles about how I'm against diversity and inclusiveness training in corporations, that it's a lie. It's not accomplishing what it sets out to do. And thank you.
You just want to turn everything into Lejeune water, huh?
Yeah. So I'm hurting the planet by throwing Joy Behar in a pond.
Let's be real about this. It's not like you're out there going like full Kanye or anything. You're just
you're
making a joke about Joy Behar. She is
the idea that making fun of Joy Behar is somehow a sign of hating all women is so bonkers.
Well, and I wrote like I said, I wrote articles on diversity and inclusiveness, and they came out and said, you're a trans hater. You're homophobic. And I'm like, my son is gay. How the hell can you say this? And transphobic, I don't even mention trans people in the articles. I just say that these programs don't accomplish anything meaningful.
Because that's the thing with the Maoist cultural revolution. It's not the truth of the accusation doesn't matter. It is making the accusation stick, hopefully in such a way as to force you to abase yourself before the mob. Yeah. And then they'll destroy you anyway.
It's a struggle session.
Because it's power. I wrote something a couple of years ago, actually, when the whole cancel culture thing was really starting to get going. And I compared it to the Ring in Tolkien. It wasn't the people compared the Ring to nuclear weapons, but it's not. It's the power to destroy, and that's what these people find such an intoxicating narcotic. It doesn't even just they don't actually believe any of this stuff. They just, I can say the right things and completely burn down someone's life. And that sheer will to power is what is pouring gasoline on these flames.
Right, but the Ring's power wasn't just straight up destruction; it was the power through corruption, and it was controlling other people.
Guys, we are not doing another Tolkien session.
You can't fight it, Mike.
But you're right. These folks don't actually contribute anything to society, be it in their normal jobs, their normal lives. The only place that they're important is on the internet. And it's the only feedback that they get are people clicking like or getting upset at what they post. And that's the only way they exist. If the internet disappeared for 2 weeks, there would be a whole bunch of these woke people that would not be able to function. Because they literally don't exist in our society beyond being on the internet.
And the real hell of this is it's the easiest power in the world to fight if you have the stones for it. Is people, they have this power because people give it to them. Like Catalyst didn't have to. All they had to do was be like, "Lol, no." Like communist detected, opinions rejected, no. All they had to do was just ignore them, and they would have gone away eventually. But for some reason, so many people in positions of business are so fucking spineless that a little bit of heat on Twitter, and they just run screaming. It just terrifies them.
Yeah.
And this has been going on for at least 8 to 10 years. It's like this, like I said earlier, this could have been nipped in the bud if people would just have drawn the line and said, no, we are not rearranging everything because your fifis got hurt. Grow a pair.
And
but instead, we cater to them. And we've been catering to them for the better part of a decade, and look where we're at now.
And it's a self-perpetuating cycle. The more you negotiate with terrorists, the more the terrorists keep taking hostages. They keep coming back for more. keep paying the woke guild to keep coming back for more.
Yeah, this is, imagine how it would be if the four of us said, one of these people is posting during the daytime. Let's find his boss. And we're going to contact their employer. Because that's what they did with me. They contacted my employer. They actually contacted my employer's employer and complained about them. Can you imagine if we went after the woke and started going, hey, by the way, in the middle of the day while this person's supposed to be working at your company, he was posting crap on Twitter and it's going to get you dragged into a lawsuit at some point. Let them deal with it at some point. Because I think that's the only way we're going to flip this table on these people is to start giving them back exactly what they're doing.
The flaw in that is that most of them aren't actually employed. So you'd have to go after their Patreon and their Twitter accounts, which is generally how these spats end up is somebody gets banned or suspended from Twitter and they freak out. And then Elon, gets another $8. But that has kind of changed the game in and of itself. It's just Twitter being under new management.
Oh, it has, definitely. And it's confirmed what a lot of us have suspected when the Twitter files were released, suddenly conspiracy theories became, reality and the government was involved in censorship and certain senators were literally contacting to get people, censored, etc. It's wild.
The best part of it all is, though, if one of these companies would just stick it out through one of these online mob rages, is in 6 months nobody's going to remember it. We have the shortest attention span for this political crap anymore. It's like they're just going to move on to the next thing in a matter of days or weeks. Just tell them no. Let them have their little temper tantrum, continue business as usual, and get on with your life. They'll move on to something else.
Fortunately, Mike, I think Wargate is exactly that kind of company. So, Blaine, as sad as I am that you're not going to be writing in Battletech anymore, you picked the right company.
Yes. I got approached by 5 different publishers. They're all good, and they were fantastic. I clicked with the guys at Wargate. I can't explain what the whole vibe was. It was like, Walt and I talked a couple times and it was like, okay, this guy understands gaming. He understands what we're trying to accomplish. It wasn't necessarily the best deal. It was the right deal and it was the right people. And I looked to me, I'm from that generation that I looked for the relationship. I want to have guys that I want to do business with for the next 10, 20 years, and so, Wargate's been fun. Fun to work for. They are, and when I did this Ranger competition thing, Walt helped me with some of the paperwork because we needed a letter from Wargate that I was working on a book and stuff. It's been just fantastic.
So, how was that anyway? Did you see them kicking things in the face with their tiger legs, or kicking tigers in the face? I can't remember how that video went.
Oh,
the Ranger competition.
The Ranger competition was great. I went as a member of the media, so it's wide open access. I'm not used to rolling out at 04 or 15. Not my preferred time of day, but it was well worth it. Stunning to watch these guys who, are literally pushing themselves way past physical points of endurance into their mental endurance zones. And I mean, just going from one event to the next nonstop for 3 days and 3 nights they did this. And I mean, I got to go out with the choppers when they helloed out. I got to go into the urban combat area when they dropped in. Got to go out with the live fire. When they were doing their live fire with the 240s, which I really had a lot of fun with.
It's hard not to have fun with the 240.
I know. And I got to crawl inside a tank, because I do a lot of stuff in Blue Dawn with the M1 Abrams. I actually got to get into the driver's seat, although we almost had a Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree moment getting me out of the tank because it turns out they were like, well, just bend your knees and put your feet under your butt. And I'm like, I haven't been able to do that in 35 years. So this is going to require a little bit of help. But it was fun. I mean, I got to, get hands on with this. I got to interview a lot of rangers and, really about situations that we're going to be doing in land and sea and talking about. So I just saw urban combat, but I saw it in 4-story buildings. What happens if this is in downtown Manhattan? What changes? What would be your approach? And it's like, that's different. We've only cleared 20-story buildings before as about our maximum. You're starting to talk 60-story buildings, 40-story buildings. They gave me some interesting timelines to work with and some interesting ideas that'll end up in the books, and so I love it. Wargate was so much fun to work with this. It's just been a blast. And watching these guys go through this competition, all I can think of is, why does anybody watch American Ninja? This is free. You just got to go down there and watch it. Why isn't this on TV? This would make an awesome mini series on Netflix. It would make a great sporting event to watch. But the problem is it's not woke. There's no tutus.
I think they tried with that Making the Cut show.
Yeah. I remember watching the BRC one for Making the Cut. I knew pretty much all the instructors.
Oh, wow.
At least half of them were boots on my first or even second deployment.
Oh, they grow up so fast.
Oh, yeah, they do. Sort of. But, and then watching the end, and I'm like, and then you get to battalion, and then the real work starts.
Yeah. It was amazing, though. The camaraderie was fantastic. And like I said, just getting to interview these, not the participants as much as the guys who were there supporting them. And the family members that are out there supporting them are just phenomenal as well. It was a lot of fun.
Did you get to stay for the diversity, inclusion, and equity class?
No. God, that would have been torture. I've been through, I think, 3 or 4 of those classes when I worked at Ernst & Young.
They're incorporating it into SEER. You have to endure that.
No, they did. They're weird.
Without that bullshit.
That'd be a good place to incorporate it, though.
Yeah.
God, no. Yeah,
replacing boots with that would just, there'd be murders.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. It would be horrible. They always throw in one event that doesn't make any sense, but it's more for show. This year it was axe throwing. And I was like, no. Yeah.
The Spetsnaz stuff. No.
And I sat there going, do they really do this? It's like, and they're like, no, this is for the folks in the stands, and we always try to throw one thing in that we don't think everybody's going to be really good at. So, yeah.
Well, a lot of those guys,
essays go.
A lot of those guys probably keep the tomahawks on them just in case they get transported into this fantasy world full of magic and sorcerers and monsters. Sometimes you just need to cut down a tree.
The only problem I'm having with Pete's book is it's so damn cold, and I was raised in Michigan. And it's just every time he describes it, I'm like, this is kind of like when I went to school in 6th grade. I didn't enjoy this.
Well, we actually just had a snowstorm yesterday, so
wow, where are you at?
Montana.
Oh,
yeah.
On the other side of the
500 feet with the longest and roughest winter we've had in a long time.
It's going to 90 here tomorrow in Virginia.
So. Yeah, it might get to 60 in the next week.
I'm in Northern Virginia, and it was pretty nice today. I went for a walk and everything.
Yeah, it was.
I'm in southern Minnesota. It was in April. We had a blizzard, and then like the next week it got into the 80s, and then it was like cold and rainy again, and we got a little bit more snow, and now it's just raining again. So it's been
like Maryland.
It's been a prairie winter. But we're definitely out of that drought we've had. So, hey, Blaine, where in Michigan are you from?
I was born in Virginia, but raised in Battle Creek.
Oh, I was born in Maryland, but I grew up in the Upper Peninsula.
Oh, a Youper, eh?
My dad was born and raised. But
That's the UP of Michigan is, for anybody who's never been there, is a separate country from the rest of the whole planet.
a separate poor country. It's like the West Virginia of Michigan. But,
never heard that description, but I'm going to use that. It's just very different up there. And the people are great, but it's a little bit like the movie Fargo.
I think you'll find it's more like the movie Escanaba into Moonlight.
Yes, I had a roommate in the barracks who introduced me to Escanaba into Moonlight. He was actually from North Dakota, but that was his yearly pre-deer season movie, was Escanaba into Moonlight.
Somebody made a comment about accordions, and you laughed, but my mom was a bartender, and there was polka night in there.
I'll never forget when I was in college. I had a friend, and he was like, "Oh, one of my buddies is up in Northern Michigan University." We were at Central Michigan, and
I went to Northern Michigan University.
Yeah, it's like they get snow. It's like Buffalo snow wise up there, and there's only like a forestry program in the college, and so they're all going to be lumberjacks or something. You know,
they got the bachelor's degree in lumberjack.
Well, and he got up there and he would send these letters down. He's like, I met a girl, and there's only like 6 girls in the campus. You know,
I think he might be mixing up Northern Michigan University and Michigan Tech.
Maybe that was it.
Michigan Tech is
Michigan Tech.
That's the one. They have a forestry program there, and I have friends who went there, and they said
Mike, it's Michigan. Have you considered that they all have forestry programs?
Northern Michigan University didn't, that I remember.
It may have been Tech. You may be right.
Tech did, and it was an engineering college, so it was about 2-to-1 male to female ratio. For the ladies there, you know, the odds were good, but the goods were odd, they said, if you were looking for a man.
The way he described her was, you know, she's not really attractive. And then we'd get a letter back, and he'd be like, yeah, my girlfriend, she's pretty hot, blah, blah, blah. Then we saw a picture of her, and I'm like, wow, she's got like a beard.
Reminds you of Baghdad, Pete.
Dwarven women.
When you're trapped in the snow all winter in the UP, your standards drop dramatically.
Look, man, it's hard out there on the periphery.
I still remember. Yeah. So for my first deployment, we went to Kuwait first, and then up into Iraq. And first day on the ground, I go into the Porta-John, and written up there because it was Ali Al Salim Air Base, so everybody was going in and out through there. And scrawled on the inside of the Porta-John was, "Ladies, how does it feel knowing you're about to be ugly again?" Deployment 10 is a thing.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, they just got uglier.
Wow.
Blaine, are you planning to do anything with the Battletech ideas you didn't submit to CGL? No. Yeah, they paid off for those. It took forever to get them to pay for stuff, but they finally did. As far as I'm concerned, they own those ideas. I'm not going to mess with them. The stuff I'm doing is more fun and interesting anyway. So, you know, if they want to, I doubt they'll ever publish them because they've dug a hole and they're stuck in it, you know. So, no, those ideas will never see the light of day. And I'm not going to talk about them either because I really don't want to do stuff that helps promote Battletech, you know.
Well, you kind of freed yourself up because with Land and Sea, you're not tied to the like feudal world of Battletech where everything is very set in terms of the politics and that. So you get more real world, you know, variety and opportunities for stories to head different directions. So
I use for your question about my 3D printer. I use a Frozone or whatever 3D. I use the resin printer in 8K because I love the quality of the minis I get. You know, but in terms of land and sea, like what you brought up, Coop, I just love it because it's set 20 years in the future. And I base everything off stuff. I spent a lot of time on DARPA's site dumping down stuff about what the future tech might look like. And I read a lot of reports. You know, a lot of stuff is very public about what's being developed, et cetera. And I try to incorporate that in. You know,
Yeah, people don't realize it. Like DARPA really wants people to be like, I have a better idea than what you just released. Here, let me show you how. Because they're very like just vacuuming up everything they can. It really is the test bed. So they welcome all sorts of things, and they are very good at or describing what they're doing and showing like these concepts so that people will be like, you're doing it all wrong. Let me show you a better way to do it. And it'll be like, yes, you don't say. Okay. Yeah.
That's why it's funny when you see all these like media pieces, like usually they're written as like scare pieces. Well, DARPA is working on such and such. Like, yeah, they're kind of doing that with everything though. A lot of it is just speculation. They're just putting
DARPA is where we send all the mad scientists that don't need a high salary. Like they give them a GS rating and, you know, be like, hey, do whatever you were going to do when you were reading Omni magazine in the 80s. Let's go.
yeah. How would you describe yourself? I'm a poor man's Lex Luthor. Welcome to DARPA.
Yeah. Look, man, it's important. What if somebody like Superman does show up? We want this guy on our side.
Right.
I'm Lex Luthor from Wish.
Yeah.
Rex Rufo.
He's injecting something in his veins. I don't know if it's kryptonite, but
good question. Are there plans for land sea to go off Earth? We have had discussions about that, and they're probably at some point in the life cycle of the product. The fight's going to go somewhere beyond Earth. Yes. You have to, because there's a point where, you know, this war is going to drag out for a while. I mean, you know, basically aliens have landed. They've landed in the oceans. They've been there for 5 years breeding an army, and then they hit every shoreline of every country.
So was Land and Sea possibly inspired by watching Pacific Rim and just being like, this is trash, let me do it better?
No, I didn't.
Battle LA, right?
Okay, no, not Battle of LA, and definitely not the movie Battleship.
You know, here's the thing, Blaine. I rewatched that recently, and I remember it being the dumbest movie I've ever seen. And upon rewatching it, it's still the dumbest movie of that time period. It was straight up Transformers level, but compared to what we're getting now, it's like, hey, you know what? They actually know how a story works. So.
You guys know my cinema habits. It wouldn't possibly be the dumbest movie I've ever seen.
I'm pretty sure Riff Tracks has done a Battleship track.
They have to have.
Yeah.
Pacific Rim was what I would call mildly entertaining. Yeah,
it's not a good movie. It's just a fun movie.
Yeah, if you suspend all disbelief and are really drunk, it's actually not a bad movie.
I do remember back in 2012, I had just gotten back from Afghanistan. I made some people on Facebook kind of grumpy at me because I said the aliens in Battleship were better than the aliens in the Avengers movie.
I mean, yeah. Dude, Battleship, I was never expecting Battleship to be a love letter to the game, but they really did go out of their way to incorporate all the silliest elements of the game into that movie.
There's only like 3 concepts to the game.
Exactly. And they went out of their way to incorporate all of them. It made for a worse movie, but they did it anyway.
There were 2 things that like disappointed me. There wasn't actually a battleship in the game, in the movie that I remember. And
there was. It was the USS Missouri.
It was. But you didn't get to hear Liam Neeson say, "You sank my battleship." So
yeah,
Liam Neeson was there for the trailers, not the movie.
Yeah.
That was when his star was ascendant. He would be in anything, whether or not he was at all suited for the. Remember when they cast him as Zeus in that remake of Clash of
Clash
the
of the
Titans.
Titans. Ooh.
The whole
Yeah, and I remember Clash of the
That-
Titans being more like a adaptation of an anime than the actual 80s movie.
yeah, he was like, yeah, released the Kraken. Like he didn't even care if it was released or not. You know, it was just
He's like James Earl Jones in the new Lion King, where he's just like, Simba.
And I'm only halfway through the Rings of Power. I haven't violently thrown up yet.
why did you bring that up? Oh God.
Well, no, he posted it as a comment a minute ago. I'm only halfway through.
You two, both of you, behave.
Okay.
We are not you, Blaine. You're fine. You're a guest. These two, we are not getting another 2-hour-long tangent about the goddamn Rings of Power.
You hear that, Pete? We need to go for at least 3 hours.
Spent a whole year
Yes.
talking about that damn TV.
Oh man, 3 hours. I don't know if I can pull that off, Mike.
But there is obviously with like the Battleship movies, the Transformers movies, the Pacific Rim movies, there is this hankering for giant stompy robots. Like everybody loves those, whether or not they like to admit it. And I'm surprised it's just like Battletech and Japan and you that are really pushing that. Going after that market share.
You, Battletech, and Japan.
Yeah, well,
The entire nation.
Battletech and Blaine are the only ones that do it the way I like.
DreamPod 9's been out there for a long time with their product line. There's other mecha stuff out there. We didn't do giant mechs. Our mechs are only like 9 to 12 feet tall because we had specific combat requirements for them to be able to enter most buildings. It's going to be a snug fit, but I can get a rig in a building, or at least push through the wallboard enough to get a rig through the building.
I got some good news because let me tell you about how snug armored warfare is.
Yeah. Oh, I sat in the Abrams tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was snug. It's real snug. And the smell. Every armored vehicle I've ever been in has the exact same aroma, that mix of sweat and lubricant and despair.
AP8.
Yeah.
Helicopters are about the same way.
Yeah, but there's a breeze in the helicopters. But did you were worried about like the actual tactical requirements, not just like the square cube law or anything like that? Because a lot of people are just like, if we break that rule, we're going all out and just.
Well, when we did the Asha rigs, which are our mecha, we did them with specific purpose. So having a 3-story war robot like you have in Battletech is incredibly impractical. Having 100 tons run down a street does nothing but crater the street and break every gas and water line in the street while you're doing it. We really wanted to go more for the realistic aspects. There's a lot of flaws with Battletech. Their machine guns have 100-meter range. I don't get it. Their missiles, half the missiles that get fired miss. You can only have 2 mechs in a hex, and a hex is 50 meters across. Let's do some basic math here and try to get through this. And if we're going to do these rigs, they had to have actual applicability. And in urban combat, that's very useful to have something that gives you enhanced speed, protection, and gives you the capability to knock out an armored vehicle. That is potent to have in an urban combat environment. Tanks are limited in some respects in terms of what they can do in urban combat, and having the ability to wade through your infantry support and take on a tank by getting behind that tank or right next to that tank and blasting it is a lot of fun. So we really wanted to apply, as much realism as we could to that. I'm not saying it's realistic. It's mech suit.
It's fun realistic.
Yeah. if we're going to get into realistic, let's be honest, this ends up being a real dull call.
That's the thing about, like, if you're trying to write hard science fiction, the harder it gets, the less science fictional it gets. Because, I mean, this is kind of a peeve of mine, because some guys will say that, well, they speculate, well, this doesn't break the laws of physics as we understand them, so we're going to act like it's perfectly feasible, even though it's not. Like, having planet-sized megastructures in space and such and such. So that's pretty fantastical too.
That's why, like, they called Michael Crichton's books techno thrillers. They didn't call them science fiction, because he was extrapolating off of where he thought a technological development might go and whatever the problems are with that. Yeah. So, I mean, his books are almost always more sci-fi than the hardest sci-fi, because at least he's not breaking relativity,
Well, and there's a lot of, when you get into a lot of the gaming universes, there's a lot of what I call hand wavium that goes on. It's like, well, we need to be able to power a mech. Oh, we'll have a fusion power plant. There, woo, I've waved my hand, magic's taken place. And it's like, you get too much of that and it just becomes fantasy, and to the point where it's not really realistic. And we used to get into these discussions with Battletech, because they're like, what colors do you paint your mech for camouflage? I said, it's running at 97 kilometers an hour. It's 3 stories tall and it weighs 70 tons. You can paint it hot freaking pink, okay? Because it's not going to blend in anywhere. It's not like it can pause and go, I'm a tree. It's just, it's ridiculous, the stuff you get into. But by bringing it down so that the Asha rigs are smaller, I can deal with things like camouflage and things along those lines. So it's a little more fun to play with. That's all.
I mean, there is a certain balance that has to be struck, even in the thrillers that I've done most of my work in, between what is strictly speaking realistic and what makes for a good story. And it's a delicate balance sometimes.
It is. And there's guys on both ends of the spectrum, because a lot of, especially the vets, go, you didn't quite get that right. And I'm like, okay, but we're trying to tell a narrative story here.
And you can get really down in the weeds over what is realistic. Like, is it possible but not likely, or am I suggesting something that's probably not possible but needs to happen for the story? Like, if I want to write a space opera where I have an interstellar civilization, I'm going to have to invent some things that may or may not be possible. Probably not, right?
Yeah.
But if I want to write a story about, Russia and China invading the United States, well, that's not going to happen either, but it's not physically impossible. It doesn't violate the laws of the universe, but a whole bunch of things would have to change for that to be plausible.
Yeah. And you have to, it's the old thing with gaming. If you've ever played war games or miniatures games or any of this, the more realistic it was, the less playable it became and the less fun it was, because you were literally looking up stuff on charts. And the classic example is SPI's Battle for North Africa, where the game takes 600 hours to play.
Fun.
It has rules about the Italian pasta. I am not exaggerating.
So do the Italians, all right?
Yeah, for the Italians fighting in the desert, if they get their pasta ration, they get better endurance rating, blah, blah, blah. The game is so unplayable that I don't know if they ever completed a full. I've never heard of anybody actually completing a full session of it. But okay, there are people that are fanatics for that stuff.
That takes that takes an autistic level of detail that. Wow.
It's better in theory than it is in practice.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss Bob Thurston's stuff, since he's dead. He actually wrote the RoboJocks novelization first.
But it is the closest thing we'll get to a Battletech movie for a while.
I got approached at one point by a producer that wanted to secure the rights to some of my stuff, and I sent him on to Fanatics and Tops about that. I don't think it'll ever happen. And if it does happen, you got to bear in mind Hollywood's going to get involved, and those guys could fuck up a one-car funeral. I mean, they will take that IP, and the fans are constantly like, "Oh, we've got to have a movie." I'm like, "Be careful what you ask for."
That's like asking for a continuation of Firefly. Like it sounds better in your head than it will be in reality.
Especially with Joss Whedon in current day.
Yeah. Well, we were all excited when they were going to do The Hobbit. It was like, "Oh, Peter Jackson's going to do The Hobbit. That'll be great." Wait a minute, it's going to be 3 movies? What the hell?
Somebody made a wish on a monkey's paw.
Yeah. And
the wargs are going to look like the wolf from The Sword and the Stone.
I love that. I love Pete doing the cringing monkey paw ad. But it's true. They will take a perfectly good IP and screw it up. And we're seeing that time and time again with some of these series that are out there.
And getting worse as time goes on because the writers seem to be a combination of psychopath and drooling retard.
Oh, yeah.
I got to think through that. I'm going to go with that. That works.
Well, it's all nepotism. Before, like, even as recently as 30 years ago, you had to like pitch your way into Hollywood. Now everybody is just somebody's son, daughter, or nephew, or plaything that gets the job despite a lack of skills. And even the companies kind of even prefer the lack of skills because they don't have the confidence to really like argue their artistic vision and be like, no, we need to make this more like Avengers. You do as I say because you have no resume, as it were. And they just go along with it.
There's not a lot of good storytelling. It just, they don't know how to tell a good story. Now, there are exceptions. Reacher was good. Yes. Terminal List, loved it. And it's fairly true to the IP. So those are good examples, but a lot of the other stuff, especially in the fantasy realm, like Wheel of Time and stuff, it just doesn't carry it. Everybody wants the next Game of Thrones thing, and it's like, be careful what you ask for. I remember the last 2 seasons of that show.
Yeah, so did these people wanted the next Game of Thrones? Do you remember how that ended?
Yeah. I just think it was great that all these people named their daughters Khaleesi.
Yeah.
In like the first 2 seasons, and then it's like, okay, she's a raving psychotic.
But my favorite characters from Game of Thrones are Titus Polo and Lucius Vorenus. So
I still get a kick out of the fact that those 2 dudes, it was
Tyrion Hines.
It was McKidd and Purefoy.
Okay, so because Tyrion Hines went along with it.
Yeah, but Purefoy and McKidd both stuck to their guns the whole time. It's like, we are never going on that show because they canceled Rome for Game of Thrones. So screw those people.
And they did it because Rome was too expensive.
Yeah.
Because it's a glory that is Rome. Of course it's expensive.
They also didn't have to worry about CGI wolves and CGI dragons and all that noise.
And they had actual history to work with instead of making up stuff from a subpar writer that then they had to try and make up more that they were even worse.
But it's also the ancient historians actually finished their books.
Yeah.
Yes. And there wasn't any agenda to them. They just told what happened.
Well, it depends on the historian.
Imagine you're like an old boomer hippie and you're like, you know what? I don't think the English Civil War was grimdark enough.
They were too colorful in their uniforms.
Oh.
So, Blaine, what do you think about? You've talked about how like you've has been kind of nice for you branching out into your own IP. One of the things that has kind of stifles my enjoyment of reading anymore is if I try to read, and I do this when I'm watching TV or playing video games too, right?
That's why you have trouble reading. You're trying to do all these sorts of things.
At the same time, yes.
Yeah.
Is I'll see it and I'm watching it or I'm reading it and I start thinking, well, if I was telling this story, what would I do differently? What differences would I make in the setting or in the direction of the story or in the characters? And then I just get distracted. And it's not like me nitpicking it because I could think I could do it better necessarily. It's just how would I do it? So I think in many cases, yes. And like Firefly, for example, there would definitely be rocket ships and be better for it. But I think in a lot of ways, I would struggle with writing with somebody else's IP just because of that. Because there are these rules and I don't agree with these. Maybe it's just better to play in your own universe after a while, huh?
I'm doing the Galaxy's Edge book right now, so I'm playing in Nick's and Jason's universe, and there's a wealth of books out there, and I've read a lot of them at this point. But they haven't done a lot with mecha. They've had mechs in the books, but they haven't done a mecha-centric book. And I fully acknowledge that there will be rewrite hell as a result of that. That there's going to be things that they come back and go, well, we're going to do it different. And we recommend you go this way, turn right, go, and rather than left, add some stuff in here. I'm fully prepared for that. It's surprising. You have to shelve your ego because when you're writing in someone else's universe, you're just taking a car on a test drive. You don't own it. So you drive extra careful and you see if you like it and if you enjoy it and stuff. And, I'm doing it the way I think the book should be done, but I fully recognize those guys are probably going to tweak the shit out of it. And that's okay because they own it and I'm cool with that. And there'll be writers that come in and write for Land and Sea. We're encouraging that. And those guys are going to have to be the same way. You can't come in and go, well, but that's my character and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's really our character, our universe. And
you mean they don't identify as a lesbian?
Yeah. You got to play with that. It's not it gets easy. It would be like me contacting Pete and going, hey, I want to do a book in your universe. He might go, well, you're a good writer, but let's hear what your story is and hear what your characters are and see if that's going to work. And, you got to kind of work through that. So,
Pete, can you imagine if the Tuatha have mechs? Does that ruin the universe a little bit?
I don't really. I can't really see it. But,
okay,
it's just giant suits of armor powered by dragon's blood. That's all.
I like it.
It's not really the way the Tuatha work, though.
No. It all comes down to how do you replenish supplies.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten that far in the book, so don't tell me yet. I'm not counting the ammo, but they're getting low.
I actually just finished my Order of the Centurion book and turned it into Jason about 2 weeks ago. So I'm still waiting on those rewrites.
Yeah, they got to factor in Blaine's mechs into it.
No. Well, maybe. I don't know. It's their mechs. I'm just having fun. Like I said, it's just a romp through somebody else's. It's like being invited over and saying, hey, I've got all these toys. And you're like, dude, you got so many cool toys in your toy box. I don't have this. So you get to play with someone else's toys for a while. That's kind of fun. I saw that question up too. Can an Asher take a tank or something?
They were asking with the Asher rigs, are tanks still factored into the?
Tanks are still in there. I got Schwarzkopf armor fighting vehicles and Buford tanks, and it's 20 years in the future, so we got new hardware.
Yeah, people don't really factor in, like, unless you've been in the military or paid attention to military tech levels, they don't tend to advance all that much within a decade. So
Yeah.
it's like when people try to do like 10 years in the future and everything is just completely revamped. I was like, that is optimistic.
These days, yeah.
Especially
It
these
didn't
days.
used to be that way, especially not with aircraft.
Oh no. They went through like 3 generations in a 5-year war.
Yeah. But
How many times have they tried to replace the M4 in the last 30 years?
Look, man, the Germans just can't do it. We needed to rely on the Swiss. So.
But yeah, I to me, tanks and stuff are going to be there, and they still have a role to play. And there's been a war in the land and sea universe between the U.S. and Russia. They fought up in Alaska, and there's a whole background to it. And everybody keeps clamoring for, well, why don't you tell that story? And I'm like, because it doesn't involve aliens. You know, I'm trying to write about. At some point, we're going to do kind of a Red Storm Rising series on that war, and there's plenty of veteran characters that are in Land and Sea you'll get to see in their youth and in their prime fighting in there, but that's not where we want to play right now. That's something
that'd be a good concept for an anthology entry. It's just get a bunch of authors, that's their entry into this world, just flesh out the background.
Oh yeah. We've got a lot of the background down, but it's going to be fun. And I want to go play there, but it's like the Russians have their own problems with this alien invasion too. So, you know,
Russians in Alaska, Operation Seward's Ghost.
Okay, I'm gonna have to option that because I may use that.
Well, okay, before you do that, I stole that.
Okay.
It was from the campaign material for Jet Fighter 3, the flight simulator. Very kind of a crappy flight simulator, but they had all this deep lore that came with it that was nowhere in the game.
Mike's the only one that read the mission briefs instead of reading through it.
Mike was the only one who played the game too. It was pretty bad, but they had this whole convoluted story in there in the lore, and that was one of them where the Russians tried to say that they still owned Alaska and they started sending troops in. And
that was like me playing Rainbow Six. I got halfway through the game before I realized that it's featuring the characters from the book, because I just sped through all the menus and then got into the mission. I was like, oh wait, no, I actually have to plan stuff out.
I've been wanting to try to figure out how to bring in a reference to the Angel of Kiev just for grins, because it's so fake and so stupid and such a propaganda piece. But it would be great if I could figure out a way to factor that into all of this.
So Sam Hyde gets a
now there's a joke nobody's going to get in 10 years.
No, they're just going to watch as somebody else laughs at it. Isn't that right,
I wonder, what? You had to be there.
Who is Sam Hyde? Look, it's going to take me a half hour to explain this deep internet lore. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. It's not.
He was the Robin Hood of our age.
Or pull up a chair, pour a drink, and let me tell you his tale.
What's that mean? Listen up, you little faggot. I'm going to tell you a real great story.
That sounds very similar to some of the discussions I had with some of the Rangers this weekend. It's like, whatever you're planning, let me tell you, man. Let me tell you some of the shit I've seen. And the ones that scared me were the ones that are I can't talk about any of this.
Just whatever you thought of. Yeah, I did it.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that.
On the plus side, that means that we're never going to get Best Ranger books. It's because they actually take it seriously that they're not allowed to write about it.
They take a lot seriously. But what was funny is I'd post a picture up and it would ignite this online argument with people about how good are Rangers really. And I'm like, you guys all talk really big shit when there's no Rangers around.
I
talk plenty of shit when there are Rangers around.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is amusing watching Rangers and Marines go back and forth. It is. I like.
Though we will both gang up on SEALs.
Yeah.
Rangers and Marines will be like, oh, there's a SEAL here. Hey, let's go make fun of the squid.
And we are going to next month when we have Mike Massa on.
Oh yes, we will.
And people might say to me,
neither of us are on team hair gel, as it were.
somebody might say to me, like, you were in the Air Force. How you're going to make fun of a Navy SEAL? Like, yeah, fucking watch it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, he's like, you think you can phase me with your Air Force jokes? I saw a guy doing PT by riding a unicycle. You can't. I've seen it, man.
Yeah.
No, it all just depends on superior numbers, as most firefights are.
Yep. And we know exactly, we know the chink in Mass's armor too. So.
Oh, that's going to be fun. Oh, maybe he can comment on the sea portion of the land and sea. Just be like, the aliens wouldn't. They'd have to go through the schools of dolphins before they get to the land part.
Yeah. Yes.
I haven't covered any of the special forces stuff at all. I don't want to get into that just yet because with war on two complete coasts, hitting the U.S., it's like that's a whole different shtick.
Well, you got your hands full with the conventional forces anyway. It's like there's enough stories to tell there that you don't need to get into the secret scrolls.
Well, in the book we got dropping tomorrow, Flotsam of War, I've got this hunt. We have a lot of militia units that form. So like there's a hunt club in Georgia that goes out and says, "Hey, we get to go kill things. Awesome!" So
I don't care what you say. I'm shooting
unit.
at that balloon.
Yeah, they become a militia unit that's like, because you're going to have those good old boys and girls out there with their lots of guns and lots of testosterone wanting to go kill some aliens,
Ringo actually did something like that years ago in Through the Looking Glass, the Charge of the Redneck Brigade.
But I just want like where the enemy is so like stuck up in terms of how they figure out the language. It's all very proper, and so in order to get an unbreakable code, instead of getting the Navajo language, you just get like the CB radio long haul trucker guys.
Or just somebody from Louisiana or northern.
Yeah, Creole.
Were there words in that?
They're speaking a language that we didn't account for.
It was a comedian, Chris Titus, that said, I heard somebody speak in Creole once, and I was like, you're speaking banjo.
It was like casting witch doctor spells.
Duramax power.
No, they have NASCAR logos and stuff on their rigs.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Like they don't have wheels. Are they gonna like get jacked up legs to make them taller? Then is that
No, but it's going to do the low riding thing where it just bounces up whenever they walk.
And it's got this hydraulic jaw under the cockpit.
No, the militia units just get to go in and shoot shit up. They don't get ashers, but it's fun. I like that aspect because one of the things I loved about Battletech was the mercenaries, and I was like, with militias, we can do the same thing. And from a gameplay perspective, it's great because you can form a militia unit,
Right, but I just want to see them like jerry rig stuff onto it, like have like the cow stoppers from trains as like protective shoes for the ashers. I love the mercenary part of Battletech as well. That's actually how I got into that world. It took me about 5 years to realize that MechWarrior and Battletech were the same franchise. Because when I was young, my parents finally got us a PC. Because before that, we were just working off the Mac 2. So we had all of 2 games to choose from. They just picked out a random game for us kids to play on. And it was MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. So like 5 years down the road, people were like, yeah, you should check out Battletech. I was like, nah, that's just a ripoff of MechWarrior. And then like I had to do a deep dive and figure out that no, MechWarrior is just the simulation genre of Battletech.
Yeah. Ah, those were the days.
Oh yeah. Back when like 8 megabytes of RAM was a heavy hitting computer.
Oh yeah.
It was fun. I miss some of those games. I stopped playing MechWarrior Online just because with all the controversy and stuff, people were making comments about me online, and I was like, I don't need this crap. I just wanted to blow shit up. So, there's other online games I can play to blow stuff up.
You can play War Thunder or World of Tanks and get embroiled in an espionage controversy.
Let me tell you what I learned at Best Ranger competition.
Or Minecraft now, apparently. Now we're dumping classified information into Minecraft discords.
Yeah, that was amazing. Because I'm like, wow, I couldn't fathom that. It was like, what an interesting way to disseminate the information.
And some people, I saw a bunch of people having their hot takes online, like, how is it that this 21-year-old has access to this classified information? Like, you don't know anything about how military intelligence works, do you? Like, the lower enlisted guys are like 21. They get their clearance because that's how you start off in that career. And then the better question is, how is this information that is in no way pertinent to his job, how was he able to find it and download it to disseminate it? My guess is it was floating around on the zipper net like it shouldn't have been, which is exactly what Bradley Manning did back when. And you think they would have learned, but no, you wouldn't think that if you knew how they work. So,
yeah, I mean, I had a secret clearance when I was 18. I was doing clerical work in the summer for the government, for the Department of Defense, and it's not you can get the security clearance. You just don't have the need to know in many cases. And that's the real thing is I just needed it because I was carrying comms traffic
and,
manually delivering comms printouts in the 80s, back in the good old days when the Russians were real Russians.
Back when the VKV was actually a thing.
Yeah.
They were until about last year.
Well, that's VDV.
Oh.
I think it's interesting.
In your defense, Mike, that's what I meant. I just fucked up the acronym.
I find it interesting. They're so focused on this kid, and I'm like, aren't you more interested in the data that he actually leaked?
No.
I mean, I'm like,
it's different this time for some reason.
Yeah, they're totally fixated on him, and I'm like, I want to talk about the fact that we had these 4 spy balloons fly over, and here's the bases they flew over and stuff. Gee, that's kind of interesting, kind of useful information, don't you think?
People's priorities are all kinds of screwed up these days, and they seem to shift by the day depending on who's pissed off about what.
Yeah.
Well, whichever side gets pissed off about something first, the other side has to take the contrary opinion. And so there's a primacy effect with that.
There's a whole bunch of people tonight that are upset on the internet about Joy Behar. Like, I'm going to go out and Joy Behar tonight just to prove Blaine wrong. And I'm like, that's the ultimate revenge. You're going to see Joy Behar naked.
That's some reverse psychology right there.
Going off of what Coop just said, I honestly think that if, like, tomorrow, the Biden administration came out and said, you know what, things have changed. We are now actively supporting Russia. They're in the right in Ukraine. A lot of people online would just flip, like, we have always been at war with East Asia. Like, opinions just like that.
Yeah. It's team sports, and when your career is based around outrage online, you just have to generate outrage. That's it. It doesn't matter what the underlying factors are.
And nobody remembers any of this stuff like 3 weeks later anyway, so who cares, right?
No, but if you put it in a book, people would call you out for just shitty writing.
Yeah.
That's true. But that's why I said getting back to that is why companies could ride out these angry woke mobs so easily, because we have such a short attention span anymore. Just give it a week. They'll find something else to be mad about. They're
based on fear, though. Everything that these companies do is based on fear.
It's like you have nothing to fear. They can't hurt you. All they can do is rage out on Twitter for a little while. Let them seethe. They'll give up. Just tell them no. You don't even have to be mean about it. Just feel like respectfully we decline. Just leave it at that. Just give them a generic PR statement and ignore them. It'll go away. But they can't reach down and find their fucking testicles to do even that half the time. So they get what they get.
They've got a twisted understanding of compassion too.
Yeah.
Because X person is within such and such a group that has been determined by the narrative to be oppressed, then we have to be compassionate towards that person at the expense of, well, our integrity, people that we actually have a responsibility to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Even more than that, they don't want to be seen as picking on this person.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's, oh God, the bad PR. That gets their public relations people up in a tizzy.
Well,
like
I missed when these corporate decisions were actually made by the Uncle Moneybags, like robber baron stereotype, who actually built the company and ran the company, so he had that in his interest, as opposed to just like, we'll get our marketing team to figure out our strategy for us. And these people, all they did was go through this, marketing and public relations doctorate through school, rather than actually talking with people and figuring out how fickle these outrage mobs are. So,
yeah. I think history is going to look back on this time as a wasteland. It's going to be what the hell was going on with the American public?
Robert Heinlein was right about the crazy years. We're living it.
Well, but I was around in '68. People keep going, America's never been this divided, and I'm like, clearly you weren't around 1968, man.
Or the 1860s.
Yeah. It's like America's been divided before, and it usually goes through a fit like this, and then it resets.
That's why I've kind of moved away from a lot of the doom, because there's so much doomerism online these days, and a lot of it's coming from young people, like younger millennials and Zoomers, you could tell this is their first political cycle. This is their first election they've lost. They, like on the right, some of these folks really thought that electing Trump that one time means they won forever and everything was solved. And then when that wasn't the case, they're just burn it down. It's all over. Well, that's not how politics works, gang. You got to keep pushing that boulder up the hill forever. That's the way it goes.
Yep. Eternal vigilance.
Because if you stop, it's going to roll you over. I mean, that's.
That sounds like a book series. Blaine, you should get on that. See what happens when the progressives take over.
I did that. It's fun. It's fun to play with that and explore it and things along those lines. I mean, it was fun killing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on page 6 of the book.
In Minecraft.
In his book, he's talking about his book.
In the book, I didn't do it for real, but it was there's a certain amount of joy that kicks in with that. And I've had some fun with some real life characters that I've incorporated into this as fictional characters that are just interesting, and they're people that we deal with all the time, and it's fun being able to kind of poke at them occasionally.
I've actually got a couple of I've had a couple characters based on real people, one of whom knew quite well that he was a character, and he told me that he gave his copy of one of the books to his mom and said, "I'm probably going to die because Pete kills everyone."
We gotta kill characters, otherwise what's the point?
There's no stakes, then what are you doing?
My introduction to that was like through the various charity auctions where you could pay to get your name in a book for a character that gets killed. So I just thought that's how it normally went.
Everybody acts like George R.R. Martin somehow invented killing characters, and I'm like, it's been going on a lot over mankind's history.
I think there's a certain segment of people out there where he was the first book they read that wasn't Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe they didn't even read the book. Maybe they just saw the TV show, but.
Well, I also thought it was weird that they were like, oh my God, I can't believe he killed his main character. It's like, it was Sean Bean. You didn't see this coming?
Yeah.
But
Sean,
also,
Sean Bean's entire life is walking around with a target on his chest.
I think it became a real trope with him, though, because he didn't let characters have an arc at all. They would just, you this character you liked, he dropped dead. It got to the point where at the end of one of his books, I can't even really remember specifically because this was more than a decade ago I read this, mind you. I was in Afghanistan, actually. There was a paragraph at the beginning of the book saying you might be, or at the end of the book, saying you might be wondering, where is such and such? Where is John at the wall? Where is he had to write this paragraph explaining why he wasn't writing this book about these characters that you cared about and wanted to read about? And I thought to myself, well, George, maybe you should have just wrote a book about those guys instead of explaining why you weren't writing a book about them. He killed off so many of his likable characters. He was trying to introduce new ones later on, and nobody gave a shit anymore because I didn't.
Well,
So,
you want readers to bond with the characters so that when a character suffers a loss, they feel it. I mean, you want to elicit an emotional reaction.
you got to use that. You got to use that wisely, though, right?
Oh,
Well, the chat brings up a good point, though, is that anybody who is shocked by George R. R. Martin killing off his main characters has never read a 40K book ever.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Particularly Dan Abnett.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I wish people wouldn't act like George was representative of the entire fantasy genre, though. One of our friends, Larry, has brought up a point that I brought up before, which is you are killing so many up and coming authors' careers before they even start by not buying a book until the series is finished. Because if you think it's hard to break into the writing industry with one book, try breaking in with 5 books. So
yeah, that's not, especially with like traditional publishing. That ain't how that works. You very rarely get a deal for multiple books as a new writer.
Well, not even that, but if your debut book doesn't sell well, the publisher's just going to be like, well, nobody wants to read your book.
Yeah, you're not going to get a second chance.
When all the customers are like, I'm going to wait till the series finishes.
But that's
you're not getting the series then.
That's why I was grateful that with Bay and my last 2 books, The Family Business and Trouble Walked In, they let me do standalone books. They're both just one-offs. There's no trilogy plan. There's no series. I just wrote a story and it's done. So nobody has to worry about missing. Oh, well, what if it's done? Yeah, what you get is what you get. I'm off writing something else now. So, and maybe you could use, I mean, that's the way it used to be kind of standard in fiction before everything had to be a series. And I think there's room for more of that now. It seems like everything in genre fiction is turned into, it has to be an ongoing series.
Well, it's because everybody wants the Amazon adaptation where it's like 5-10 episode seasons.
Bain was doing that for a long time. I mean, it goes like Honor Harrington, right? That book series has been going on since the 90s. But not everything has to be that. And I think, especially in traditional publishing, I think there's room for a little bit more just standalone books out there. Yeah. And I hope some people will start trying to write a few. Right? It doesn't need to be a big chunk of the market, but just write a book. Just tell your story. That way, if you can make a series out of it, if you're like a new author, great. If not, well, you told your story and it's done. So don't hedge your bets a little bit. Don't.
Well,
it's hard to pitch an entire series too. Yeah. It's really hard to pitch an entire series.
What you also get from that is
I'm going to write one book.
What you also get from that is somebody will write a fairly long book and then break it up into like different installments because they only wrote the one book, but everybody wants a series. So now each entry is it's an act. It's not a book in and of itself. So it's almost like buying the old like Pokemon games on Game Boy. It's like 2 or 1 game for the price of 2, And
sometimes it's kind of hitting that balance with the market as it shifts, because you do have those people who they just want more and more and more and more and more of these particular characters continuing to move through. but that still tapers off over time. So if you've got a series, you can kind of build an audience a little bit faster than if you've just got a bunch of standalones, because they'll get connected to those characters and that world and those situations. But at the same time, you've got to know when to basically wrap it up and end it and start something new. Maybe it's in the same universe. I'm having to work on navigating some of that myself now, because, I mean, Brannigan's Blackheart's 12 books long, and it's tapered off to the point that it's very much going to be a side project going on from here on out. But I think there's room for both, and I think you can also you can do the once you've got the IP established, you can branch out and do more standalones, duologies, trilogies, what have you.
Yeah, I'm not against series on principle or anything like that. I'm just saying this mentality of like the series needs to be completed before I'm even going to approach the IP. That just ruins everything.
I think that, first of all, I think that's a minority of people that voice that. And, I get it. There's a suspicion that some authors aren't going to deliver. But let's face it, I would say the vast majority of authors actually do deliver, in a series. They, it might not be as quick as what you want, but, the books do come. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do this full time, and it takes 2 to 3 months to go through a first draft. And you're looking at that point like at 125, 130,000 words. Then you got to polish edit and get that all done. Then it goes off and it gets edited and critiqued, and rewrites come back, and it's a process you go through. And, you guys know this, is if you're writing a book, you end up reading the book 5 or 6 or 7 times. And by the time you're done, it's like, I don't want to read this book ever again.
I think there's an issue that crops up when they're trying to like convert like fiction, like written fiction, into like the Amazon binge model, where it's just a bunch of things all at once, or just got to keep cranking them out. And sooner or later, quality is going to suffer if you keep pushing them out too fast, because you can only write so fast. And it depends on the genre. It depends on what your readers expect. But I think some of it's stuff where people are talking about, authors say, I'm going to write 6, 7, 8 books this year. Like, are they full-length books? Are they like, how much? What are you sacrificing for this? And is it worth it? Are you making up for it in sales? And that's a balance that needs to be struck too, I think, because writing is not like, it's not like doing like live streaming or doing a YouTube show. You can't just like throw on the camera and make content. It requires a lot of forethought and planning, and it's harder. Yeah, that's my thing. And some of us are just slow. So.
Well, I was doing this when I was working full time, and it took forever to write a book. And also books have changed dramatically. When I was doing stuff with Penguin Putnam for Battletech, an average book length was 65,000 words.
Really?
That was what your typical paperback novel was back in the 90s.
That's considered a novella these days.
Yeah. Now, if you're not cranking, and there's a lot of reasons to do it, but if you're not cranking over 120 to plus 1,000 words, people feel like you're gypping them, on the weight factor, or especially on the audiobook piece.
I was going to ask if the audiobook, the cost per session for audiobook recordings is driving that, or if it's from the customer base.
Actually, I got this from a couple of publishers, so I can share it. But there's a lot of feeling when people have Audible credits and stuff. They look at how long a book is, and they're going, well, do I want to get a 6-hour book for my credits, or do I want to get a 12-hour book for my credits? So they actually look at there's belief, at least by some publishers, that, and I don't know if it's right or wrong. I whatever, but people look for the longer book because if they're going to spend their credits on it, they want to get more for it.
That's the popularity of audio is something that I wonder if it isn't going. It certainly can present some challenges to the writer, because now you're not just writing for the written word. Like, how does this sound read aloud? And that can change a little. That can change things sometimes, and that's something you have to consider these days.
In some ways, I think it's done a certain amount of damage, particularly in the editorial sphere, because they start looking for particular cadences and particular uses of words that may or may not actually fit what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And
that's, now you actually have to write out 5.56 instead of just putting 5.56, because everybody always
I haven't had to do
5.56 millimeter.
I have had to make that correction.
This is one of those things where it's like, this is an instance where books are being translated into a different medium here, and there's, I don't know, I was never like a huge fan of audiobooks. I listened to a couple from, like, when my first space opera came out, I got an audiobook credit for it. I listened to that. The narrator, I cannot remember her last name. Her name is Alice, and she did a fantastic job. For me, listening to a female narrator do male voices is a lot less jarring than listening to a male narrator do female voices for some reason. But when I listened to, I got the audiobook of Dune, and at least the first one, that was fully voice acted. It was parts of it were like an audio play. They had like multiple actors and everything.
Allison Johnson.
Yes. Fantastic voice actress, by the way. But, Balky did Dead Six, all three of those, and he did a great job too. But listening to him do female voices was a little bit, this is jarring for me. But
do you think the AI voice modulation is going to change that? Because on one hand, now you can have one narrator doing multiple voices that actually sound like different people. But on the other hand, there's still going to be that uncanny sort of like, this is just a dude acting like a woman.
The uncanny, it's going to take a while before it gets over the uncanny.
Yeah.
Because I've heard some of the AI voice modulation, and it still sounds wrong.
Well, so a lot of what you've heard is AI text to speech pattern, where it will machine learn off of audio samples of an individual, and then it will translate text to that voice based off of their mannerisms. Adobe, a while back, like 2010-ish, came up with a way where it will just pitch correct to different, like, you can give a sample voice and it'll pick up how that voice sounds, and then you can record your own voice and it will just change the voice. But the actual, like, speech pattern and that stuff, that's whatever you put in for your recording. They shelved the hell out of that thing because everybody was terrified that you were going to be able to do that for like political sabotage and things like that. Until all these text to speech AI came out, and like the visual AI generated images and video and all that stuff became popular, and now they're starting to look back into it. So, but that's old tech that was kind of like perfected, or at least like done very well for years, that just didn't see the light of day until Disney needed James Earl Jones in the Kenobi series.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? If they can get it to not sound like an abomination, then yeah, it has potential. But
I mean, there might still be that uncanny valley factor where it's like you're hearing, this female voice speaking on the audiobook, but in the back of your head, you're like, this is a dude.
It's gonna get worse if it's like a romance book or a
yeah, exactly. It's like this is just like what is it, Lord Darkhelmet playing with his dolls.
Yeah.
No, sir, I didn't see you playing with your dolls, sir.
It's weird too, because and I use the same narrator that Pete does for Noah does our series, and I struggle as a writer hearing somebody else even read my books. Because in my head, I know how the characters actually sound, and I don't care. Noah's a fantastic narrator and stuff, but in my mind, I have a mental imprint of what these people sound like when they talk.
Yeah,
You know,
it's especially it almost always comes out whenever there's like a use of profanity. Because like as a writer or a reader, you can interpret something as just like somebody casually swearing, like, yeah, fuck that, whatever. And then the narrator, he sees that and that's an explanation. So now it's like, oh fuck that, blah blah blah.
yeah, there's too much of that for me, but you have to listen to all the audiobooks, and that's part of being the author now. Is not only are you reading your book 7 or 8 times through the edit process, but you're going to have to now listen to somebody else read it to you, and that's always a pain.
It's interesting because the farther I go in my writing, like the more experience I get, the less and less profanity there is in my books. And it's not like I didn't even realize I was doing it at first, but there has just been less and less. And I don't know, it seems like it stands out more on the written page than it does in casual conversation, I think. But in some of the contexts I'm writing into, it just doesn't fit either. Like my work in progress is a very kind of a far future setting, so people talk differently. So a lot of our current day profanity just would be out of place anyway.
Well, I tend to agree. I was the first author to use the F-bomb in Battletech. And it's amazing because this tells you how screwed up things were at one point. They actually had to have an editorial meeting to discuss the use of the word. And I'm like, guys, you're not dealing with a 13-year-old audience anymore. These guys are all in their 40s and 50s that are reading this stuff. It's not little kids. And I assure you, anybody reading this series has heard the word.
Some of them may have even done it.
Well, especially if they played the game.
Very few gamers.
Especially if you played the game and like you accidentally overheat. Trust me, you've said profanity.
Yeah. But they were like, no, well, we got to be careful about how we use this. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. It's like.
Well, the other end of that spectrum is like when you actually have license to cut, like any show on early HBO, when the writers finally heard it's like, yeah, you can cuss all you want, we don't care. Or Battlestar Galactica, where it's like, oh, we just changed a few letters around and now we get to say it as much as we want. Yeah. They will say it as much as they want and then some.
Wasn't that like, didn't NYPD Blue do that back in the 90s where they could say, they could get away with like a little bit more swearing than
they could, I think they could say the S word. It was like that was no F words.
But. So much so that South Park did a spoof of it that
Well, yeah, it's just things have changed, and people are sitting and worry about this stuff. And I'm like, if you're worried about it, walk through the streets of any American city and just listen. You're going to hear a lot of profanity.
Yep. Especially when I go there, they don't like me at all.
Oh yeah. You're up in Northern Virginia.
Yeah. Well, people don't talk up here; they just network.
Yeah, I kind of toned things down a little bit because the American Praetorian series, all the characters talked like infantrymen, and it was constant, high volume. I think there were several of us who were writing thrillers at the time who we went through and basically had a contest amongst us of how many F-bomb per book. And I think I came in second with something like 500 plus in, I think it was Alone and Unafraid.
Well, I mean, you beat Quentin Tarantino, but I'm sure your writing's better.
Yeah, it's just part of everyday life.
But yeah, like I said, the last ones I've used it less, but I just try to use it in context. And I don't know, it's not because I'm certainly not prudish about using it in real life. Don't get me wrong. I mean Pete could tell you how I struggled to censor myself around his son. So I'm particularly bad about that. But I don't know. Like I said, it just kind of happened that way. So, but that's okay. That's okay. It'll be a little bit less jarring for the audiobook if it gets made into an audiobook, I suppose.
I'm still going to play with it every chance I get.
Guys,
It's a toy, and I like it.
we are at the 2-hour mark, guys. So, Blaine,
Yeah, we are.
what have you got? What have you got coming out, or what are you working on now that you'd like to tell the audience about?
Holy cow. Tomorrow launches Flotsam of War, which is book 4 of Land and Sea, which is an anthology. Covers a whole bunch of different stories, different perspectives of the war, etc. Book 5 will come out in June. And if you've ever seen the movie Kelly's Heroes, that was the inspiration for doing this. So we're going to have a bank robbery in the middle of a war zone, and it's going to be really fun because there's aliens involved and all sorts of betrayal and backstabbing and just fun stuff. Land and Sea, I've got the new book coming out. No Greater Tyranny will be out sometime June or July. For that, and I've already got the next book in the series is already written, so that'll be out, I hope, either late this year or beginning of next year for the Blue Dawn series. And I'm at 82,000 words, 83,000 words as of tonight on School of Hard Knocks, which is for Galaxy's Edge. So I've only got, I think, and I've got a project from Bain Books that'll be coming out where I just contributed a short story to an anthology there, but that'll pop this year. So I think I've got 9 books this year that'll be out. So
well over 1 million words just in 1 year.
Yeah.
I will give you that.
Well, it's just for fun. This is how I relax. I enjoy this stuff. If it's a great mental therapy, if you're a writer, anybody who writes books knows this. It's very therapeutic.
And honestly, being prolific is one of the secrets of success too. You just keep putting your work out there.
Yeah.
So, Pete, what have you got going on now?
Well, like I said, I turned in the Order of the Centurion book to Jason Onspach about 2 weeks ago. Do not know when that's coming out. Sometime this year. I am just about a quarter of the way through Silver Lead, book 3 of Brave New Disorder, and the 3rd Palace Group Solutions book. That should be coming out. That's coming out end of next month. So I still got a lot of work to do in the next few weeks.
Cool.
Well, Blaine, it was great having you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. It's always good talking to guys who do what I do.
Well,
and me, yeah.
Hey, you were fun, Coop.
He's the
we'll get you there, Coop.
He's the heart and soul.
We just got to sit on you, make you work.
Uh-oh, Pete froze with his coffee cup. There we go.
That's what he gets for talking back to me.
All right. Well, thank you folks. Very much.
It's been a good one, and we will be back next month with Mike Massa.
Mike Massa, the author and Navy SEAL. I know.
Yeah, that's redundant.
It's so original, right? But
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Take it easy, guys.